evidence and gave there are new developments. Can we discuss them? Not at this time, but I think you'll be hearing from us soon.
Are you closer you said to stay tuned about the January 6th pipe bomber case? Are there new developments we can discuss?
Okay, I think we can get going again. Good morning, everybody. It is the 25th day of November, 2025. You're listening to Global Affairs Unfiltered with me, Jack Stockwell. As we continue to make sure that global affairs remain unfiltered, going through the topics of the day, as there are all these little fires that are just kind of burning everywhere. When you put one little fire out, another one starts. Welcome to K-Talk as well this morning. This is simulcast at K-Talk Radio. And we'll be here for an hour trying to bring you up to date on what's just happened the last 24 hours and this continuing nonsense that's going on over the 28-point peace plan that I think it was Larry Johnson said was dead on arrival. I mean, this is ridiculous. This redrafting stuff that's taking place, and this last weekend meeting with President Trump, and this negotiating team in Geneva, headed up by, of course, Marco Rubio, who seems to be much more in charge of foreign affairs than I gave him credit for, and Ukraine's besieged head of the office of the president, Andrei Yermak, and they're coming up with a 19-point plan. Do you notice who's missing in the discussion? This is so ridiculous. This is so, this 28-point peace plan, and now the allegation is it was leaked out of Russia. Russia's the one who put it together. And then they used some underground sources to leak it out and bring it out to the public light as though this is something that Russia wants to do. This is like, was it the Missouri? Was it the USS Missouri that the peace with or surrender of the Japanese took place in Tokyo Harbor? I think that's the right boat. And it's like, and MacArthur is there, and I don't remember if Yokohama or oh heavens, yes, anyway, the imperial representatives of the Emperor of Japan present at the signing of the Japanese surrender. And then could you imagine at the moment that the Japanese are signing the surrender agreement with the Western allies, that the Japanese pulled out another little document at the end saying that in lieu of the new peaceful arrangements in their surrender, they get to take back parts of the Philippines, and they get to take back parts of China, and they get to take back parts of Manchuria, and they get to take back parts of Russia that they had during the war. And then what MacArthur would say if he saw something like that. That's kind of what's going on with this 28-point peace plan. Here the Russians have completely won the war. I was looking at a map the other day, it was just yesterday, that showed where the Russian forces are right now as opposed to the Ukrainian forces. And they're surrounded. The Ukrainians are completely surrounded. The Russians are offering them surrender, lay down your weapons, we'll attend to your sick and your wounded, we'll feed you, we'll clothe you. We have the horrors of Ukrainian winter coming upon us right now. And just lay down your weapons. You won't be killed. You'll be able to join up with all the other members of the Ukrainian defense or attack forces, whatever, that have already surrendered. There's no loss of dignity in this. You weren't here by your own choice anyway. You were here forced here by your government. We're not your enemy. The government is your enemy, and we're just giving you a chance to surrender and be able to go home in one piece. And yet, what they're doing, what they're trying to do here, because, of course, remember, the coalition of the willing, the ones who are screaming the loudest right now, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, over continuing this war using NATO as the shield to the continuing war with Russia. I mean, even the UK has recently announced, I'll get to the statistics in a minute, of putting British troops on the ground in the Ukraine. I mean, they're still talking about this kind of nonsense. And Russia isn't going to swap property that they've taken. Every last acre that they've taken so far, and they're taking more and more every day, probably all the way up to the Dnieper River eventually, maybe even before Christmas, is going to become lock, stock, and barrel property of the Russian Federation. And they're not about to trust anything the West has to say anymore. And now, of course, in the last 2 days, Atacam missiles that have been delivered to the UK from the United States, or not to the Ukraine from the United States, are now being fired into Russian neighborhoods. It's just crazy. So much has been made of this redrafting process. Yet even by Kyiv's account, many of the points that were agreed upon, several major ones were definitely left aside. Yes, the major ones where Kyiv and Ukraine will not become part of NATO, where Kyiv and the Ukraine will cut their fighting forces back to an incredibly small amount of defensive numbers. What Kyiv wants is 800,000 man troops, which is just preposterous. And supposedly, a couple other details are going to be worked out between President Trump and Zelensky. Where's the third party here? It's just crazy. So as these Geneva talks have come to an end, Rubio's on his way back to Washington, may already be there. But in Moscow, when they were asked about the matter, the Kremlin spokesman, Peskov, responded just yesterday that Russia had not received anything official regarding the outcomes of the Geneva talks. And Peskov said this: "We are, of course, closely monitoring media reports, which have been abundant over the past few days, including from Geneva. We have not seen any plan yet. We have read the statement following the discussions in Geneva. Some adjustments have been made to the text we saw earlier. We will wait. Apparently, the dialogue is continuing. Some contracts will continue. So far, I repeat, we have not received anything officially." So the British Prime Minister Starmer said yesterday that today the coalition of the willing will meet via video to confer on the stance of the proposals so far. This is just absolute insanity. That they think this is coming to an end that will benefit Kyiv, that's going to benefit the West. The Russians have been lied to over and over and over again ever since James Baker, under George Bush I, swore that NATO would not move an inch further east. So apparently the Geneva sessions began with the U.S. team in rather heated objections to the Kyiv team, had circulated the rumors that the 28 points were really written by Moscow. One of the participants, the Ukraine's Deputy Foreign Minister Koletskia, reported in the Financial Times, which is a pretty good source for this information if you want the West view, said after hours of painstaking talks that nearly fell apart before they started, the U.S. and Ukrainian teams reached agreements on several issues, but placed in brackets the most contentious points, including territorial issues and relations between NATO, Russia, and the U.S. For the U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky to decide. Yeah. Well, you're going to have President Trump and so-called President Zelensky making some final agreements in this 28-point peace plan, irrespective of Russia's absence. Very few things are left from the original version. We developed a solid body of convergence and a few things we can compromise on. The rest will need leadership decisions. Yeah, between President Trump and Zelensky. It's not often I'm left without words. I'm just I'm just shocked that they actually think they're going to get the Russians to retreat. As I said, Russia's not going to believe a word that comes out of the mouth of anybody from the West. And they're going to hold on to this land that's all ethnic Russian anyway. The whole eastern part of Ukraine is Slavic. Russians are Slavic. It's their blood. And Ukraine is only, 100 years old anyway. It was just a piece of property that Khrushchev gave to the Ukrainians because they didn't want to have to pay the money to support it, so the Ukrainians could pay for it themselves because it's such a good source of food, especially grain. Ukraine just hasn't existed that long as far as a political entity. So on November 24th, yesterday, the advisor, one of the Ukrainian advisors, made the comment, says no final version on the document, as some issues have been left out of the technical talks in Geneva. Some of the most difficult issues will be resolved by the presidents. There are not many of them, but they're certainly the greatest public interest. Yeah, like swapping land, like cutting back on the size of the Ukrainian defense forces, like Ukraine not becoming a part of NATO, and the denazification of the Kyiv government. Russia isn't going to bend on that. They're not going to bend on that for a second. And to think that somehow President Trump and President Zelensky are going to sit down and work out something that the Russians will accept is just absolutely ludicrous. So the strategic picture, before I get into that, I want to mention something else. And that is, do you know that the office of Blake Moore, the 4th District, Congressional District in Utah, said they got a great response from KTalk, and so they have renewed the contract for advertising. Advertising dollars means that KTalk stays on the air. Without dollars, KTalk can't eat any more than you can eat without dollars. So you have done a wonderful job. We want to thank you for that. But your job isn't over. I need you to call these offices once again on behalf of KTalk Radio. It's of supreme importance that these offices know that you're listening to their commercials. It's not like they're offering some, face cream for men and that you can't tell whether it worked or not unless the sales go up. This is something where you call and say, thank you. Thank you for advertising at KTalk Radio. And we hear your ads, and we're very grateful for what Senator Lee and Congressman Moore have done for the working families tax cut. So here, if you don't have the numbers from last week when I asked you to do this, here are the numbers once again. Well, you just make a quick call. Say, hey, I heard you on KTalk Radio. I just want to thank you for advertising. And maybe even more importantly, the working families tax cut that you supported. For Senator Lee's office, 202-225-5444. Once again, 202-225-5444. And for Congressman Moore, 202-225-0453. 202-225-0453. You don't even to spend 15 seconds. Just call, and you may have to leave a message. That's fine. Leave a message. Thank you for advertising at KTalk Radio. We really appreciate it. And especially the efforts that you have done for the working families tax cut that you'll be able to enjoy next year. All right. Now, also, is it 5 after yet? Oh, it's 14 after. There's supposed to be some commercials playing, and I I don't see them showing up on the recording screen, so I don't know if they're playing or not. Anyway, tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. is the beginning of the Black Friday sale at my office. This is a once-a-year thing where we drop the discount down to 20%. From time to time during the year, we do a 15% saving. This is the big one of the year. A lot of people wait for this one, for the supplements. Now, as far as the spinal correction is concerned, that's half off through the end of December. I just started on someone yesterday with just severe vertigo. And at the same time, they're having vertigo, severe sciatica down the left side of their body. And it's just interesting how fast the body responds to that upper cervical correction when you get the pressure off the brainstem. They're just walking around with this kind of a dazed look on their face, like, what happened? I said, well, what are you feeling? I don't know how to describe it. I said, well, do you feel different? Yes, I feel very different. Yeah. Just watch and see what happens over the next 48, 72 hours as your body comes back online. That probably has been offline since you were a child. Anyway, tremendous decrease in vertigo, tremendous decrease in sciatic pain. So that's half off through the end of December. You'd have to call them. You can go to jackstockwell.com and tentatively make an appointment online. The crew will get in touch with you and finalize a good point that works for everybody. Or you can call the office, 801-523-1890. And then the sale begins 5 p.m. tomorrow. You don't need a discount code. It'll automatically written in as of 5 p.m. tomorrow to get 20% off. And because of the long shelf life of these products, 2 and 3 years, a lot of people will buy up a whole year's supply at once and just put them in the fridge. And you don't have to go in the fridge, just some cool, dark place. But they're all in dark bottles to keep the light off of them. But they'll buy a year's supply in advance. All right, now, if you now let me jump right in here, because there's all these contradictions that are going, and I just spent the first 15 minutes of the show on one of the major contradictions, that somehow President Trump, who is not the man of the day anymore in Russia, continues to allow the sale of weapons that are the ATACMS that are being used to attack Russian citizens now. And somehow, I mean, you just look at the absolute silliness of this. Somehow we're not supporting Ukraine directly because we're selling these weapons to the European nations, who then in turn sell them to the Ukraine. I am absolutely beside myself trying to figure out how stupid do they think we are. And so there's these fires breaking out all over the planet. The fire department shows up, puts one out, and as they turn around, there's another fire starting behind them. And this is going to be the situation until this planet finally moves to a whole new paradigm where you finally put geopolitics behind you and you start dealing on international relations that are based upon the concepts of peaceful coexistence. And the forces of the collapsing empire will always try to find some new flank to pursue their aim of preventing the emergence of a new system that would prosper peace. So having said that, it seems that, and I'm saying with great care, because I would love to see it, an end of the Ukraine war in the minds of some people is in sight. It doesn't mean that it can't be prevented and sabotaged, but the likelihood that there could be an agreement is at least in the fomenting stages. This is due to a variety of reasons, one of which is apparently the U.S. has put heavy pressure on the Ukraine, and that this meeting that took place yesterday in Geneva, on the U.S. side, you've got Witkoff and Marco Rubio, and then the Ukrainian side, you got Zelensky's office of Andrei Yermak and the National Security Council Secretary Umarov, but no Russians. And they basically concluded that there are still some questions to be solved, but according to Rubio, this was the most productive day that they've had since the beginning of Trump's second term, and that none of the items on the table are insurmountable. That was one of the last, none of the items on the table are insurmountable. Like Russia's refusal to give back any property, that's not insurmountable. So that obviously has to be, found out, but people who are commenting on it think that major progress has been made. For example, this opinion of General Vod, V-A-D, who's the former security advisor to Chancellor Merkel, who says that this is a major step towards the situation. But there are warnings coming from the Hungarian foreign minister, who fears that the EU is going to try to sabotage this agreement, but it's up in the air that, that it may come to an end. According to the plan, the Ukraine would give control over the Donbass to Russia. And in return, it would get certain areas around Kherson and Zaporizhia, which Russia has, but does not necessarily want to keep. So the major other points still have to be fine-tuned and so forth, but it is also mainly due to this increasingly untenable situation on the battlefield. They have plenty of armament. They have plenty of gas and diesel, plenty of bullets, plenty of guns. They're just running out of people to shoot them. So J.D. Vance wrote on X that the criticism against the deal is entirely based on misunderstanding of the framework or the critical reality on the ground. Well, that is definitely the case. The first sensible thing I've heard out of anybody representing the United States position in any of this came yesterday from J.D. Vance, that the framework of what you're trying to put together in a peace deal has to be examined and viewed from the critical reality on the ground, which is the Russians are moving kilometers per day, taking over other villages, taking over other towns that are all Russian anyway, ethnic Russians that are just, opening the doors. Please come in. Thank you. Get this thing over with. We're Russians. We want to be a part of Russia. Just like what happened in the Crimea back in 2014 when they voted to become part of Russia. By 90%, despite the fact that the Ukraine didn't recognize that. And then Merz, for his part, is all of a sudden discovering that he could be this great peacemaker, which is ridiculous because the details of his plan, which were known to the Chancellor's office since the beginning of November, he has kept on this bullish war hawk attitude until it's too late, and now it's too late for him to play any role because of his constant insistence of getting Germany war ready for Russia. So if it comes to this kind of an agreement, it's going to have some major ramifications, because what's going to be the fate of the coalition of the willing? I mean, they have bet their entire political careers on bringing a strategic defeat to Russia, which now obviously is not going to happen. And the big question is, what will be the effect of this huge military buildup? Because the entire weapons production in Germany, for example, the idea of building up this major drone factory, naturally, supposedly financed through monies for drone export into the Ukraine, So that now that's missing, and obviously the efforts to build up the industry are in shambles. And then also for Dassault, the delivery of 100 Rafale fighter jets from France is excluded under the 28-point plan. That all means that there's a big panic in European circles about all of this, because an awful lot of the money that was delivered to the Ukraine in bundles of $100 bills tightly wrapped in plastic, passed around to all of the players in the Western nations to build up their industries, to get ready to, like Rheinmetall, Volkswagen, that converted one of their major plants into tanks instead of Volkswagen vehicles. The same thing with Rheinmetall, building drones, and Dassault, the manufacturers of the French Rafale fighter jets, just gearing up for this big war. And now it looks like it might be over. What are they going to do with all that investment money? I mean, probably the major factor in the behavior of the Ukrainians is the fact that the Russians in the recent weeks, especially days, have just made unprecedented advances on the battlefield because there's so little resistance left. I mean, they were marching as much as 5 kilometers per day and even conquered larger settlements with a speed which so far greater than that. Now, 15 kilometers is, a little over 10 miles. If we were to go from the current location of K-Talk Studios, they're at 17200 South State, 10 miles north of that, you're getting into downtown Salt Lake. And that's how far the Russian forces are moving every day. I mean, they're going to be at the Dnieper River in no time. They'll be at the Dnieper River before Santa Claus is at the Dnieper. And then what? Well, then you got Kherson and everything else that they're threatening taking. There are several areas where thousands of Ukrainians, as I have said, have been encircled by the Russians. So they're facing either death or becoming prisoners, a big factor as well. And with this whole agreement, the idea that NATO membership for Ukraine is off the table, the sending of foreign troops into Ukraine is off the table, it's all going to have major changes. I haven't seen all the 28 points, or the 24 points, 28 points, but there is some provisions in there for maintaining troops from other countries in the Ukraine. The Russians aren't going to allow that. It's just, are they just keeping the doors open for more money to get into the Ukraine from the United States, from your tax dollars, to pass around to all the players, so that by the time the money stops flowing, everybody will have their billions in their bank accounts? The Europeans, especially Germany and Italy, have other problems they wanted to settle in the context of this G20 meeting that Trump didn't attend, that Putin didn't attend, that Xi Jinping didn't attend. Merz had a meeting with the Prime Minister of China trying to undo the damage done by the Vodafone episode earlier, that at least led to an understanding whereby Li Chang said China is willing to work with Germany with a cooperative and open attitude in fields that need further development between China and Germany, energy, intelligence, manufacturing, biomedicine, hydrogen energy technology, and then this new fusion energy that China just demonstrated, fusion energy, where they were able to maintain a plasma of this incredible temperature, causing fusion for 1 whole second. That would be limitless energy if they can sustain that plasma field. And And, they have to do it with magnetics because nothing is capable of staying outside a plasma state, holding on to this plasma material without becoming part of it itself because of the temperatures, unless somehow you can maintain this plasma field and a magnetic field, because it'll melt anything that it's contained, that contains it. But China was able to demonstrate that this last week, holding that plasma energy in suspension for 1 whole second. Well, what do they got to do to hold it for 10 seconds? What do they have to do to hold it for 10 years? Because the amount of energy this would produce, you never have to worry about clean fuels hereafter, or dirty fuels, or fossil fuels. So, I want a little bit more about that. I was going to get into what Japan is doing, because the other major development, which is opening up in a new way when other conflicts are kind of fading out, is the sudden new eruption of a major of tension between Japan and China. The Japanese defense minister just announced that Japan is planning to deploy medium-range missiles to Yonaguni Island, which is Japan's closest territory to Taiwan. It's only 68 miles away from the Taiwanese shore. And the Japanese defense minister, Koizumi, announced that he said that this is going to help lower the chance of an armed attack on Japan, which is absolutely ludicrous. China doesn't attack anybody. China is not going to attack Taiwan. Not when half of the political parties in Taiwan want to become part of mainland China. And in the latest election, more and more people elected to their governmental positions are in favor of finally getting back with their fatherland and having one China. And the Taiwan island would kind of remain Taiwanese, but it would be absorbed, just like Hong Kong became a part of China, although Hong Kong continues to act like Hong Kong. So the Chinese reacted very strongly to the idea of putting these missiles that close to Taiwan. So Wang Yi, the foreign minister, urged Japan to reflect upon and correct these ideas. Don't make the same mistakes that they've made in the Ukraine. And because the countries, China said, should re-examine Japan's historic crimes and act to prevent the resurgence of Japanese militarism. And he said this was very shocking for a sitting Japanese leader to openly send a warning signal about attempting to intervene militarily in the Taiwan question. He said China would resolutely hit back. China will never allow right-wing forces in Japan to turn back the wheel of history. I mean, this is really an unprecedentedly sharp language coming out of China. If the Russians accuse Germany of the Fourth Reich, as they're doing, and now the Chinese accuse Japan of returning to militarism, there's clearly some common discussion between China and Russia on these matters. So as a result, the Japanese Kyodo News reported that Hong Kong Special Administration Region is suspending exchanges with Japan. I mean, these people are crazy. These people are absolutely crazy and criminal, especially the parts of Ukraine that started firing Atacam missiles into Russian neighborhoods just this weekend. But this plasma thing, this is really incredible to have a stable plasma state, even if only for 1 second. So the East China Experimental Advanced Superconducting Tokamak in Hefei in the Anhui province in China, they reached this breakthrough with 1.066 seconds of stable plasma state. They invited scientists from 10 countries, including France, the UK, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Austria, and Belgium, which joined this Hefei fusion declaration, saying that this still faces major challenges, but it's all the more important to pull the wisdom and strength of scientists worldwide, because reaching fusion power would be to access mankind's ultimate energy, which solves the energy problems for a practically unforeseeably long time, which is one definite positive thing that has come out of this. Now, today is the day when the Cartel of the Suns in Venezuela is going to be declared an external terrorist organization, thereby giving the theoretical green light for a military operation against Venezuela. So that's another brush fire that could become a very large conflagration if the military operation in the United States would go ahead with this. And this situation is just full of contradictions. One of them, for sure, is that practically in the same day when President Trump behaved in an extremely disgusting way towards Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his most loyal supporters, he also met with Mamdani in New York, sending just shockwaves throughout the right-wing Trumpists all over the world, who had already screamed that now New York is being given to Islamic jihadists. So here's Trump meeting with Mamdani. All of how that's going to play out for Trump, who knows? But if the MAGA base will not forgive him for what he's doing to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has set her resignation date as January 5th, that'll have an impact on the MAGA base for sure. It has to be looked at and observed, because that'll influence the midterm elections, and obviously all of that has an impact on the strategic situation. I was reading one report this morning that said, if the midterm elections were today, what would happen? And this article clearly said the Republicans will lose the House and the Senate. If they lose the House and the Senate within 2 weeks, President Trump will be impeached, and probably 2 hours later, the Senate will try him and convict him and remove him from office. And then that leaves J.D. Vance. And you notice how Vance isn't in the news as much as he used to be? Why? Well, I think the Republicans are planning for a killing in the midterms next year, because of the pathways that President Trump has undertaken. Like the situation in Gaza, where there's still genocide going on. Even if it's a little less, genocide is still genocide. Refusing water, refusing food, refusing medical care, and shooting people who try to violate those refusals is still genocide. But the killing is ongoing. The humanitarian aid is not enough. And Netanyahu has made it very clear he's not going to agree to a two-state solution. So if you look at these spots on the world map, it's clear that nothing is in safe quarters. A completely new paradigm shift is required, especially with the pending danger of the everything bubble blowout that's facing all of us. I mean, the world is still on a powder keg and requires our best efforts to move the government in a different direction. All right. some other things that are in the news I think that's important. And I didn't see the ad come across my recording screen. There's supposed to be an ad at the bottom of the hour. I don't want to talk over it, but I haven't seen anything different. All right, just looking at this information regarding Senator Lee's office. Blake Moore's office said they got great response from KTalk, and that's why they renewed the contract. You usually use KBJA in case the senators don't know who KTalk is, even though Mike Lee has joined me on many rumors that Trump is planning a military action against Venezuela today or tomorrow. Yeah. That's what I was talking about earlier. Today is the day that the Cartel of the Suns in Venezuela, SUNS, Cartel of the Suns, is going to be declared an external terrorist organization. And with the earlier designations of a terrorist organization opening up, making it easier to attack, just like the cartels across the border in Mexico, deemed terrorist organizations. So we can start flying our F-35s over top of the cartel headquarters and bombing them out of existence. Whether that's happened or not, it hasn't gotten into the news, because I don't think the Mexican government is going to sit still while we send bombers into their territory, even if we're getting rid of the scum. But the Cartel of the Suns today is the designation as an external terrorist organization. And the Cartel of the Suns apparently is one of the leading powers, along with Maduro, in the governance of Venezuela. The USS Gerald Ford is sitting there, but also a Russian cruiser, a Russian, I don't think it's a destroyer, but a major Russian ship just showed up in the southern Caribbean area. I don't know if it's in the vicinity of the American flotilla around the USS Gerald Ford. But just one crazy person pushing one crazy button. So that could, before the sun goes down in the west today, something very serious could happen. Don't you want another Vietnam? Wouldn't you just love to have another Vietnam, especially on our side of the world, so that the body bags wouldn't have to travel so far coming back to Dover Air Force Base? Did I really say that? All right. Senator Cassidy, got to say something about him, the Republican from Louisiana. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, just 4 or 5 days ago, changed wording on its website, the advisory page about vaccines, to suggest it is an open question whether they cause autism. And since then, Senator Bill Cassidy, a physician, has objected to this. He said at one point, "Life is lived forward. What I have to do is my best to reassure the American people that vaccines are safe. We have to work against unfortunate attempts to undermine faith." Do you know there's no safety studies on these vaccines? So it's interesting how Senator Cassidy is using the word undermined faith. That's correct. That's true. It takes faith to believe in vaccines, because there are no placebo-controlled, double-blind, crossover studies to show that you're any better off being vaccinated than not being vaccinated. And there's plenty of evidence to show that vaccinations are extremely immunocompromising. So on November 19th, Health and Human Services Secretary Bobby Kennedy Jr. ordered the CDC to update its website page on vaccine safety to pose the association with autism. The CDC page used to say this: vaccines do not cause autism. The new page says this: the claim that vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines cause autism. Studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. There is a link. 2, sources that show that infant vaccines, and I have said this so many times on my health show, an infant can't make antibodies. Their immune system is not capable until after a year of maturity to produce antibodies. So any vaccines given during the first year of life is wasted. Any reliable book on human physiology, and I like Guyton's, Guyton. I like Guyton's physiology. It's pretty good. And you go into infant development, and you go into immune system development of an infant, and it says right there in black and white, the infant's immune system is not capable of producing antibodies until about the 12th month of life. So why do you inject them during the first year of life? Well, one argument says they do it to train the parents to get the kids in for vaccines, because vaccines are a tremendously lucrative market. But that's interesting. I mean, this is Bobby Kennedy throwing down the gauntlet in front of the pharmaceutical companies when he ruled the CDC to make this change. I'm going to read it again. This is stunning. The claim vaccines do not cause autism is not an evidence-based claim because studies have not ruled out the possibility that infant vaccines can cause autism. Studies supporting a link have been ignored by health authorities. So the page points to a link to a study by the University of Colorado at Boulder, an environmental scientist there who has also written for RFK's Children's Health Defense newsletter, part of the RFK associated network of what they call anti-scientific publicists. See, that's always the claim of the anti-scientist part of healthcare, that the alternative group is the anti-science. The medical group is all based on science. The terribly incorrect assertion that a medical doctor is a scientist, and therefore, if your medical doctor tells you these aluminum adjuvants in the vaccines won't hurt your child, you assume that science is speaking when there is no science to back that comment up. So, in early December of last year, RFK handpicked this advisory committee on immunization practices. Excuse me. This December, he has handpicked this group of scientists to put together the advisory committee on immunization practices. They're going to discuss aluminum adjuvants in the vaccines. This panel could recommend that vaccine manufacturers remove the aluminum adjuvants, which would take these vaccines out of circulation and could take months, even years, for replacement vaccines to be developed, tested, and approved for use. Now, The aluminum ingredient that is in a vaccine is not kitchen aluminum foiled. The aluminum adjuvants are added to boost the patient's immune response, theoretically. Aluminum is naturally present in many foods, including vegetables. It's in tea, it's in chocolate. Most infants are exposed to significantly larger amounts of aluminum in breast milk and baby formula than they will ever get from vaccines. This is what they're saying. And dozens of scientific studies have shown no link between vaccines and autism, including the Danish study of 1.2 million children that was released this year in July. And in light of all of this, the RFK CDC wording that studies showing the link between vaccines and aluminum and autism have been ignored is inaccurate. They have been debunked. This is what Bobby Kennedy is up against, these kinds of assertions. And the persistent anti-vaccine drumbeat and hysteria have caused 1 in 6 Americans to reject or delay vaccinations for their children. And then the Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo vowed to end school vaccine mandates. This reduced vigilance so far has caused the highest number of measles cases in the U.S. in 33 years. Really? How many of them died? Yeah, exactly. All right, where are we getting to? We're in the last few minutes. Boy, all this other stuff I was going to talk about. This Guyanese patrol vessel operating with the U.S. military ships. What else did I have here in my notes? Oh, the UK is planning on troops. Well, one defense insider said the publication, the coalition was planning, this in this 28-point plan, that the UK's own willingness to send troops haven't been changed by Trump's plan. So even though the 28-point plan, I think I erroneously said, would call for some foreign troops, the 28-point plan says no, but the UK says yes, we're going to bypass Trump's plan because we still intend on putting UK troops on the ground in Ukraine. Then there was Zelensky's speech to his people. I'm not going to bother you with that. All right. Now, again, tomorrow will be a health show. The 20% discount on supplements. And remember, these are food-based supplements. These are things your body actually needs. It's not that synthetic crap that floods the market that usually leads to greater deficiencies. If there's plenty of information about all of that at my website, forbiddendoctor.com. But the 20% discount for those who regularly use these supplements, I had a conversation last night on the phone with someone from Las Vegas that heard me on a Las Vegas radio station at 3 a.m. And she said, I only heard it because I'm up at 3 a.m. And she says, I was so moved by what you had to say, I will make sure I'm listening to that radio station at 3 a.m. on Saturday mornings from now on. So we talked. She's 78. And she said, everything you said made the most sense of any doctor I've ever heard. And what did I say to her? I said, simply, the things we're suffering from is starvation. Heart disease, the number one killer in America, is simply starving your heart of the essential nutrients it needs to function correctly. Because when you examine cultures around this planet who don't have heart disease, and you look at what they're eating, as opposed to what we're eating, primarily an abundance of foods from Mother Nature, not from food manufacturing plants, they don't have any heart disease. They don't have any cancer. They don't have any diabetes. They don't even have any obese people. So that's what goes into these supplements that I recommend. And there's more information about it at forbiddendoctor.com. But tomorrow evening at 5 p.m., that would be Wednesday, yeah, the 20% sale starts. You do not need a discount coupon code. It'll automatically be figured in there for you. And this is only once a year. And then also, I've got two new patients I'm seeing today who are coming in because of the half price on what I do structurally with the spine. And then tomorrow we have a half a day, but Friday we'll be back in the office. Just people can't wait till Monday. So we're going to work the day after Thanksgiving. All right, let's see here. So you would call the office. If you don't want to order online, that's fine. You can order by calling the office, 801-523-1890, or you can come in and do your business across the counter. All right, now one more time, just to call the offices of Senator Lee and Blake Moore. I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. I'm trying to keep advertising dollars coming into K-Talk, KBJA. And you might say that. You might say, I'm calling on behalf of KBJA in Salt Lake City. Maybe not necessarily K-Talk. Senator Lee's office certainly knows who K-Talk is. But if you call their offices and just say, hey, thanks for advertising at K-Talk. We've been listening to K-Talk for a long time, and we appreciate what you've done for the working families tax cut. We just wanted to say thanks. Goodbye. That's all you have to do. Senator Lee's number is 202-225-5444. Congressman Moore, 202-225-0453. And let me tell you something. One thing I learned from various, including Senator Hatch, who was on my show a few times in the past, running for his last re-election, which he got. One thing I learned from these people and other members of Congress over the 20 years that I was at K-Talk, with the regular morning show, political people respond when their constituents call in or write letters or whatever else. And if they are debating on what direction to go because they're getting party pressure from their party leaders to support something that may not be in the best interest of the state of Utah, and this is the danger of party politics, if they knew their constituents wanted a certain position maintained, represented, voted on, they'll do that. Because regardless of what promises or threats the party makes to the members of their party regarding campaign dollars for the next election, if they do or don't fall in line with party demands, they know that their constituents is the final judge, the final arbiter as to whether they get reelected or not. So when you call these phone numbers and you thank them, you keep K-Talk on the air. And if you want to see KBJA stay on the air, that's one of the best ways to do it. All right, several things. I'm going to talk about several things tomorrow on the health show. A lot of it's still related to the heart. We have the heart sound recorder. It's about a 30-minute experience where you can see in live representation across the computer screen what your heart is doing and how quickly it can change to better performance in a matter of minutes, given the right supplements. That should be front page news across this nation. There is a way to reverse chronic congestive heart disease, coronary vascular disease, the whole gamut of cardiomyopathies. All right, I think that'll do it for those of you on the stream. I will bid you a fond adieu. Thank you for so much for being a part. If you can like and subscribe, that helps the numbers. As I said yesterday, the health show, the YouTube Dr. Jack Stockwell, youtube.com/Dr. Jack Stock. We're almost 850 subscribers now, trying to get it to that magic 1,000 level. So those of you on the stream, thank you for so much for your attention. I will see you all tomorrow.